Hey guys, in this video I'll be talking about creating this particular page. So this is a page that I actually made in my Figma tutorial videos. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna create this page. Obviously we're not gonna have an effect like this in there because that may require JavaScript or jQuery. So we're gonna pause that for now, but let's for now just go ahead and create this particular page that you see in front of you. It's a really simple page with a header, with a heading on the left, with some images on the right. And then we have some slider elements here and a link here as well. So let's just go ahead and do that. So first of all, I'm going to open my Chrome. I'm going to move it to the side. I'm going to move my Windows to the side. And let's just go ahead and create the header. Well, first of all, if we actually go inside our Figma file, we can see the font being used is Railway. So let's just go ahead and Railway font. Just go ahead and search that. So as you can see, that's available on Google Fonts. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to download. Let's see, like this is bold. This is, let's go to the Inspect tab. This is normal. So I'm basically looking at the font weight here. So this is semi-bold, sorry. This is semi-bold, and this particular one is semi-bold as well. And we can obviously see that by going here as well, semi-bold, and this is going to be normal. So we would just require normal and semi-bold. So I'll just, again, expand my screen here. I'm going to choose the normal variant, which is the regular variant, and I'm going to choose the semi-bold one. I'm going to copy these two things here. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to paste them here. I'm just going to basically align them. I'm going to go to my styles.scss file, going to remove most of these things, and just going to go ahead and apply a font family to my body tag. So here I have my font family. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to delete my icon. I can probably keep the icon sizes. Maybe I'm not going to need them later. But let's just go ahead and now apply the header. So in the header, first of all, we're just going to have an anchor tag, and we're going to say Sunzi. Here we're going to give this a class of logo, and or probably header underscore logo. Let's just go ahead and create a separate header file. I'm going to add a comment here as well. So this is going to be layouts. Let's just go ahead and add a header. I'm going to go to my icons file, duplicate it to say header.scss, and I'm going to go ahead header underscore logo. I'm going to give it a font size of 26 pixels because I think this was 26. Oh, it's 24. So I don't think I even need to do this. I'll just go ahead and apply the font directly here. So text minus LG, or sorry, 2XL is going to be 24, as you can see, and then font minus semi-bold. And what else? Like we also have to apply a background to the body tag, since as you can see we have a background here. So I can select my frame. Here we have the background. I can go to the inspect element, and we have the main background element here. We're going to go to our body tag that's located here, and we're going to give it this background. And let's see how that looks on our page. So we have this particular background applied. Obviously this is not something that we wanted. So let's just see why we're seeing this weird background being applied here. Height 100% background minus repeat, and then no repeat. If we do a no repeat, we can see the background is only being applied at the top because the body is not necessarily taking the full height. So let's just go ahead and say that the body tag is going to take a height of 100 VH, or perhaps a minimum height of 100 VH. Once we do that, as you can see, the background is now applied. I think it looks good. And let's just go ahead and start adding these elements. So I'm going to say my text, my header is going to be text minus white. It's obviously going to be white. We have the Sunzi logo here. Let's go here and just see the maximum width of this particular header is 1140. So I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to go into my header file. I'm going to say header, and then we can also probably just modify the base container. I'm just going to give a container class and just going to give it a max width of 1140 pixels. And let's just go ahead and add a container, and then mx minus auto, which is basically going to center it horizontally. Let's just go ahead and do that. As you can see, we have a centering here applied. So I think that looks good. We also need a px minus 10. So basically just saying that you need to give some left and right padding on slightly smaller screens. Obviously it's going to give it on all screens, but let's just keep it like that for now. And I also need some padding at the top. So the padding at the top, if I hover over it, is 48. 48 basically means py minus 12. It's going to be py minus 12 bottom and top, and then we have a ul. I'm going to create some LIs in there. I'm going to say, or probably we can just say nav. This is basically the navigation. It's going to have some links. I'm going to go ahead, give it an empty link for now. I'm going to call it our artifacts. Let's just duplicate them. Our vision, contact us, and then sponsor us. Sponsor. I think the spelling for sponsor should be sponsor. So that's what we have here, and let's just go ahead and save the page. We have it appears something like this. We're going to give it a flex and then say items minus center, just to make them vertically centered, and then just going to give a maximum amount of spacing between them by saying justify minus between. So as you can see, we have the justify minus 15 here. Let's just see some of the spacing in between these. So the spacing in between each of the links is 40. So let's just go ahead and apply that. I'm going to say class space minus x basically means horizontal should be 10. 10 basically means 40. So 10 into 4 is 40. So that's pretty okay. Let's just see the font size here. The font size is 16 pixel. I think we have 16 pixel here as well. So I think that looks good. So our header is done. Let's just go ahead and add a section. So section.intro minus section, let's just name it that. We're going to say the intro section is going to have a heading on the left. So I'm going to say the H1 is going to be something like this. The font size for the H1 is 80 pixels. I'm not sure if that is actually available in Tailwind. So let's just go ahead and say intro minus section. I can create a separate SCSS file for that as well, but so considering how small this project is, I'm not sure if it's needed. So I'm just going to give font size minus 80 pixels. And if I, let's say, apply and then text minus 5XL, 5XL is 48 pixel, 8XL is 96 pixels, and 7XL is 72. So yeah, exactly, we don't have 80 available. So let's just give that 80. As we can see, it's here. We need to also give a container similar to what you see here. I'm just going to copy these classes. I'm going to say this particular thing is also going to contain a container, and let's just go ahead and replace those classes by doing this and paste it here. So we have this text here as now, and I think this probably looks okay. Let's just say text minus white. This is also going to have a text minus white. The H1 is going to also have a at apply font minus bold, or probably semi-bold. I think it was semi-bold. So let's just make it semi-bold. I think this looks good. So we need to reduce the line height. So let's just say leading minus tight to make it 1.25. What sort of a line height do we have here? We have the line height 100, which is probably going to be very similar to tight. So I think this probably looks okay. Now what we need to do is we need to center this content. So one thing that we need to note here, that this should be centered compared to the space that's available here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that the header and the section is probably going to be wrapped in a container. So I can say it's going to be a flexed container, and the flex direction is going to be column. So here we have the columns, and I'm going to save the page. Nothing really changes because obviously I haven't really done anything much. But as you can see now, the flex column is actually taking this particular space, and now I can give it a height of 100%. Obviously that doesn't work because I need to give it a height of screen so that it takes up the whole space that's available there. So if I hover over it, as you can see, it's taking the whole space. Now basically what I want to say is I want this particular container, this intro section, to actually take the maximum amount of space that's available for it to take. So if we go here, we have, sorry, not on this. We basically want this applied on the intro section. So I'm going to say flex minus 1, and let's just hover over the flex minus 1. And as you can see, the flex minus 1 is now taking the maximum amount of space that's available. I'm going to say I want the content inside of it to be vertically centered. So I'm going to say items minus center. Obviously, I also need to apply the flex class to it to center the content. And as you can see now, it's centered. What I also want to do is I want to give two divs to contain the heading and these particular navigation elements and these images as well. So let's just go ahead and give it a height of half. And I'll just go ahead and apply it like this and then just say half. So here we have it taking the half amount of space. And similarly, let's just go ahead and do that with the images. So I basically have, let's say, 4 images. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and quickly export these images. So let's just go ahead and unlock these images. Going to select all of these images. I'm going to say export. And I'm going to say I will basically want to export all of these images. And where do I want to export them? I want to export them into the Sunzi page and in the images folder here. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to say export. I'm going to select my Sunzi page here, images, and then save them. So here we have the images. We have frame 3, frame 4, whatever it is. I obviously needed to rename them appropriately here, but let's just go ahead and do that here. So image 1 and then image 4 and then image 3 and then image 2. So I'm just gonna reuse them like this. Let's just go ahead and apply our images. I'm gonna say this is gonna be inside image and then image 1. Let's just go ahead and apply it image 1, image 2, image 3, image 4. So we have these images here as well now, as you can see. What we definitely now want to do is we want to have all of these images positioned absolutely, because some of these images are overlapping, they're messing around. I don't want them to mess around with when they're connecting with some of the other images. So basically what I want to do here, I'm just going to go ahead and select all of these. I'm going to say absolute, and this should be there. So again, all of these images are here. I'm going to say top -0 just to bring them to the top. Obviously, they're not coming to the top, probably because the width isn't, because they're obviously not taking enough width or anything along those lines. So what I basically want to do is I want to say that this container should also take the maximum amount of space available. So let's just go ahead and do that. So this container is now it should actually take the maximum amount of space. It's probably not taking it because let's just see, why is it not taking it? So it's probably not taking it because we don't have a flex minus, well, we do have a flex minus column applied to it. So we have the intro section, and let's just have a look at the intro section a bit. If I just remove this, I can see I have a div inside of it. And okay, let me just go ahead and expand it to play around with it a bit. So we have this particular section, the intro section is taking the maximum amount of space. This particular thing, let's just go ahead and remove all of it. And I basically want to say, instead of items minus center, I just want to say items minus stretch and then flex. So here we have the items minus stretch, and as you can see, it's taking ample amount of space. And let's just go ahead and do that. Actually, I don't even need to do an items minus center probably on the larger container, because I obviously want the container to be taking the whole space as well. So instead of actually having a container living separately, let's just go ahead and apply the container here. I'm just going to remove this particular element, and let's just see how that looks. So I think this probably looks fine. All of these things are actually taking the maximum amount of space here. So this is good. What I basically want to do is I want to say flex items minus center to align this vertically, and that should work. Similarly, let's just go here. So the spacing basically at the top of this container is 42. So I can basically just make it empty minus 10 or pt minus 10, like, or probably empty minus 10 makes sense. So if we go here, we have this particular container. As you can see, the image at the top is probably okay. It's like really close to the edge. So I'm just basically going to say that this is going to be left minus, probably it's like, how much is it actually from the left? So it's 29 pixels, so basically 32 pixels, which makes sense. So I'm going to make it slightly far from the left. Let's just go ahead and see where this image is sitting. So this image is sitting actually 249 pixels from the left. So let's just go ahead and do that as well. So obviously we can do that with custom CSS as well, but let's just see if we have anything close to it. So 256 probably makes sense. Let's just go ahead and see how that looks. So this image 2, well, actually I don't want it to be image 2. We actually want image 3 here and then image 2 here. So let's just save it and see how that looks. So I think it looks fine. The image, the spacing at the top needs to be 58. So top minus, let's just see what's 58. So 56 is probably much closer to 58. So let's just go ahead and do that. So we have this image here, which looks good. And I'm going to remove the top 0 because that's no longer required. Here, let's just go ahead and see how that looks. So the image, the spacing at the top needs to be 220 and left is 0. So left 0 is fine, and then top 220, which is basically going to be 224. So again, we don't have to be very specific. If we wanted to be that specific, we can just go ahead and do that with CSS as well. So I think this looks good. If we actually remove this image, as we can see, this is looking really good. It's looking very similar to what we have in our mockup. And then this particular image is obviously going to be completely on the right, and the spacing from the top is going to be 251. So let's just go ahead and let's just give it top minus 56 is probably top minus 60, just to give it some differentiation, and then right minus 0. So I think this image looks good. Obviously it's not positioned correctly based on the mockup, and it's obviously not positioned correctly because if we actually go here to our container, it's not necessarily taking up a lot of real estate because it's only taking the amount of space that's available within the container. So we would have to do some negative calculations here. So instead of right minus 0, what we basically want to say is minus right, and then I just want to push it away from the edge. So let's say if we say right minus whatever, a large amount, 56 probably is not fine. So minus right minus 64. Let's just see how that looks. I think now it looks pretty similar. So again, if you wanted to be really precise, we can always actually apply it via CSS directly. One thing that I do know is that the image is not centered because obviously the image that we exported isn't really exported well because it was exceeding the container and it was cropped. So I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to say image 4, and I'm going to say replace the image 4, and I'm just going to press Command Z. Now as we can see, the image looks fine. Actually, we can even move it a bit on the side as well. So right minus 64, instead of 64, let's just say 72. So yeah, this is basically our page. We obviously want to reduce, we actually do want to increase the margin of, or actually increase the padding on the right here so that the text squishes a bit more. So let's just go ahead and do that. I want to say PR minus 12, and yeah, we have something like that. Obviously, we want this to be uppercase or capitalized. So I'm gonna say capitalize, and it's just gonna capitalize all these things. And I think this looks pretty similar to this. Let's just see if there are any other changes we need to do. Obviously, the spacing here needs to be slightly larger. So we can do that by saying PL minus 12, basically increasing the padding left here. So, but obviously the padding isn't going to work because when you're positioning items, absolutely they ignore the padding. So if we apply a margin, as you can see, that works, but now the margin is actually shifting this content as well. And if we increase the margin even more, as you can see that it does cause some issues, which we don't really want. But if we make it 32, I think this probably looks fine. We can remove the PR minus 12 since we've actually increased the margin capacity. So this element is actually, this margin is actually shrinking this element, which is something we don't want. So I'm just going to go ahead and instead of, let's say, we can obviously keep the padding here. Instead of actually giving it a margin, let's just position it, let's just give it a relative and then position it using the right key. So instead of right, we can say minus right 12, and now it's going to move it to the right without necessarily messing with any content here. So I think this is pretty close to the design that we have there. I'm just going to go ahead and add these elements. So basically these elements should be very simple. I'll go ahead and actually first of all create a div. I'm going to say this div is going to have an absolute class applied to it. It's going to be positioned at the bottom and positioned at the left. And I'm going to make this relative because I want this particular container, this absolute container, to respect its parent. So I went ahead and did that. Let's just go ahead and see how these boxes look. So these boxes are 8 pixels each and the opacity is 40 pixels. So I'm going to create a div again. I'm going to give it a width -2 and then height -2, and then yeah, let's just go ahead and do that, and then an opacity -40 and a BG -white. So this is basically going to create these elements. The spacing in between them is 6. So let's just go ahead and apply that as well. So space -x -2 is going to basically be 8. So here we have the elements, and let's just go ahead and apply a flex as well. So as we can see, this definitely looks much better. Obviously it's sticking completely to the bottom. That is something that we don't want. We want some spacing at the bottom, and the spacing at the bottom should be 60 pixels. So we can go ahead and apply that. Instead of bottom -0, let's just go ahead and say bottom -60 or anything close to 60, which is 64. So let's just go ahead and do that. So here we have these elements at the bottom, and I'm going to give this or one of those particular elements a slightly larger width. So the width of that element here, as you can see, is 92. So width, let's just see which one is actually closer to 92. 96 works, and then a rounded -full to make it rounded from the edges. And also we can obviously remove the opacity now as well. So as you can see, we have the design here. We just need to add a link to finally make this work. And let's just go ahead and add that. I basically want to say that the link can obviously be surfaced right here. And the link is going to contain the text our heritage, and then it's also going to contain an icon, which is going to be arrow -right, and it's basically going to be FAR and then FA -arrow -right. So as we can see, the text is here. So obviously the text is slightly larger than what we would expect. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to reduce that text. Let's see why that text is actually being so large. So if we go here to our anchor tag, and if we actually see the intro section as a whole is actually taking 80 pixels font size, which is something that we obviously don't want. So I'm going to go to my styles file. I'm going to say the intro section is not going to take that much size. It's only the H1 in the intro section that's going to occupy so much space or are going to take so much height. So now we have all of these things. What I want to do is I want to align the link and the buttons to the center, and I can just do that by saying by just going here and then saying items -center. That's going to center these elements, as you can see. And I also want to give this particular thing a specific margin, so I'm just going to wrap it in a container, and I'm going to say class, probably I can just, now that I've wrapped it, I can actually just go to my anchor tag and say class ml -2, just to give it a bit more spacing. And similarly, I want some spacing in between the icon and the text, so I'm just going to give an 8 pixel spacing here as well. But to do that, I actually need to wrap this our heritage in a span. So now it should probably be pretty similar to this. Obviously it's 8 pixels here, it's 20 pixels here, and it should be pretty similar here as well. It may not exactly be the same, but again, you can tweak all of those things by actually modifying the CSS. So here we have our page. Obviously it's not responsive, but that was not the task for now. And obviously making this clickable and everything, and the transitions, that's going to require some JavaScript or some jQuery, which we're not going to use right now. So that's pretty much it. Again, do let me know if this video was helpful. Do let me know if you don't understand anything. Do subscribe, to hit the bell icon, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.